They had been arguing for hours, their instruments screaming through the static, when the old diver stepped into the control room. Nobody noticed the way he listened, not to the noise, but to the silence beneath it. The USS Vanguard floated like a wounded beast in the middle of the Pacific. Her engines, once symbols of power, now rumbled weakly beneath her steel skin. The sound was wrong to hollow, to irregular, and every technician in the engine bay knew it, but they also knew what it meant to question an admiral's orders. For the last 36 hours, the ship's propulsion system had refused to restart. The admiral's patience had thinned to threads, and the young engineers were running out of excuses. Charts were scattered across consoles, diagnostic screens flickered red, and sweat dripped onto metal panels that smelled of salt and oil. At the far end of the room, Lieutenant Parker slammed a wrench down in frustration. "Sir, I'm telling you, the vibration's not mechanical, it's harmonic. There's interference somewhere in the intake resonance," he said. Admiral Sloan, a man carved from authority, turned slowly, his medals glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Then find it, Lieutenant," he barked. "This ship moves by dawn, or you'll be explaining this to command yourself." Every young engineer straightened, the fear of reprimand tightening their movements. They resumed their work, scanning readouts, adjusting valves, tightening bolts, as if motion alone could fix the broken heartbeat of the ship. No one noticed the sound of boots echoing slowly along the catwalk above them. The steps were measured, heavy but patient, like someone who had walked these halls long before they were polished. The man who appeared at the door was not in uniform. His jumpsuit was faded navy blue, his hair silver and unkempt. In his hand, he carried an old diver's helmet, its brass dulled by years of saltwater corrosion. The security guard at the door frowned. "Authorized. Personnel only, sir, you can't be in here." The old man smiled faintly. "I'm not here to interfere, son, just wanted to listen." Before the guard could respond, Admiral Sloan's voice cut across the room. "Who let a civilian in my engine room?" Every head turned. The old diver looked up, eyes calm, unflinching. "Name's McCollum. I worked on this ship when she was built, or at least the systems she carries." The admiral's brow furrowed. "You designed this system." "Not designed, sir, just tested it from below." He tapped the side of the brass helmet. From the cold side of the hull, laughter rippled quietly among the younger crew, not cruel, but dismissive. To them, this was just another salty old man spinning sea stories. But one of the senior technicians, Chief Morales, stopped laughing first. He looked at the man again, squinting. "Wait, McCollum, as in Project Deep Wake McCollum." The admiral turned sharply. "Project what?" Morales swallowed. "That was a classified acoustic test program. Back in the 80s, they said the team didn't make it out alive." The room fell silent. Even the constant hum of failing machinery seemed to hold its breath. McCollum set the helmet gently on the nearest table and crouched beside a vented grate. He closed his eyes, placing a weathered palm against the steel. For several seconds, he didn't move. The only sound was the steady rhythm of the ocean outside, pressing against the hull like a heartbeat. Then he spoke quietly. "You're not listening to the engine, Admiral. You're listening to the echo of the ocean through a broken intake baffle. The sea's talking back, and she's saying one of your bulkheads is cracked." The admiral's jaw clenched. "We've checked every system 3 times, McCollum nodded. "Hey, but you didn't feel it." He rose, looking directly at the younger engineers. "You measure everything by numbers now. Once, we measured by life." He moved toward the bulkhead ladder, motioning for Morales. "You still got a deep sound probe in storage." Morales hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. It's been 20 years since anyone used it." "Then let's dust her off." The admiral's voice thundered behind him. "Mr. McCollum, this is not your command. You can't just." McCollum turned slightly. "You want her to move by dawn, Admiral? Then you'll let me listen to what your machines can't hear." There was something in his tone, not defiance, but certainty, that made even the admiral stop. An hour later, the lower decks were filled with the rhythmic dripping of condensation. McCollum and Morales stood knee-deep in shadows and rust, cables trailing like vines. The sound probe, an old, cylindrical device, was patched into the hull's inner lining. "Frequency at 200 Hz, Morales said. voice trembling slightly. McCollum nodded, his eyes closed again. Now bring her down to 150. The speaker crackled. A low, haunting groan filled the room, like a whale's cry buried under metal. Then, faintly beneath it, came another sound. A pulse, slow, uneven. There, McCollum whispered, that's not an engine. That's water in the intake. He climbed the ladder and knocked on the pipe with a wrench. The sound was hollow, then changed halfway up. You see, cavity inside the hull air pocket. Your intake valve didn't fail, it's breathing. Morales frowned. Breathing, McCollum turned, eyes narrowing. When a ship starts to breathe, Chief, she's dying. The Admiral, who had come down, silently behind them, stared at the instruments. So you're saying the hull's cracked beneath the secondary layer? Impossible. We'd be taking on water, you are, McCollum said simply. Just not where you're looking. She's bleeding from the ribs, not the heart. There was silence. Only the pulse of the ocean through steel remained. Then, a young ensign ran in, holding a tablet. Sir? We've got movement, pressure rising in the ballast chambers. McCollum didn't even turn, opened the lower purge. Valves, slowly. Let her exhale before she collapses. The Admiral hesitated and then, for the first time in years, gave an order he didn't fully understand. Do it. Valves hissed open, releasing a long, trembling sigh through the corridors. The sound changed, the groaning eased, the vibration steadied. McCollum smiled faintly. There, you hear it now. The Admiral looked at him. Hear what? The quiet, McCollum said. That's how you know she's alive again. But the calm was short-lived. Moments later, the sonar alarm screamed through the ship. The Admiral's face drained of colour. What the hell is that? McCollum's expression turned grim. That's not your ship, Admiral. That's something moving beneath her. He picked up his helmet again, the brass glinting faintly under the emergency lights. I told you, he said softly, the ocean's been talking. You just didn't like what it had to say. The alarm still echoed through the decks, a wailing metallic shriek that vibrated through every rib of the ship. Red emergency lights spun slowly, painting the narrow corridors in pulses of blood-coloured glow. Crewmen sprinted past each other, shoving through the tight steel spaces, their boots clanging on the grey-red floors. Amid the chaos, McCollum stood motionless near the central bulkhead, listening again. His hand rested on the cold wall, and his eyes, grey and unblinking, seemed to see something beyond the noise. Morales turned toward him, shouting over the alarms, Sir, whatever's under us, it's moving fast, depth unknown. Could be debris, could be. McCollum's voice cut through, calm and cold. Debris doesn't move against current. The Admiral arrived seconds later, his uniform half unbuttoned, breath heavy. Status report. The sonar officer, pale and sweating, looked up from his console. Sir, there's something under the hull. 200 meters down and rising. It's emitting a rhythmic pattern, almost like sonar, but inverted. McCollum's eyes narrowed. Inverted how? Like it's listening to us, the officer said quietly. For a moment, the room froze. The only sound was the hum of machinery and the distant sigh of the sea. Then the Admiral barked, cut all active sonar, passive only. I don't want to give away our position, Morales whispered. Sir, with respect, we're in the middle of the Pacific. Who are we hiding from? McCollum turned his gaze from the officer to the dark ceiling. Not who, Chief. What? He stepped closer to the sonar screen, eyes scanning the green phosphorescent glow. The blip on the display moved closer, pulsing every few seconds like a heartbeat. I've heard that rhythm before, McCollum muttered. Back when I was under, deep under, the Admiral folded his arms. You're saying you've heard that pattern before? How? McCollum's expression didn't change. Because I built it. Every head in the control room turned. He continued, his tone almost detached, as if he were reciting a confession. Project Deep Wake wasn't just about listening to the ocean, we were teaching it to listen back. Our sonar system didn't just scan, it recorded resonance feedback. The sea doesn't forget, Admiral, it remembers what you make it hear. The Admiral frowned, not understanding. You're saying that thing down there is one of ours? McCollum interrupted softly. Or what's left of it. Flashback -1986, darkness, the sound of bubbles. The ocean presses down like a living weight, McCullen's younger hands. Strong, confident, turn a wrench on a massive steel panel. The beam of his diving light cuts through silt and shadow, revealing the hull of a prototype submersible. Letters are faintly visible on the side, DW-01 Deep Wake Experimental System. Through the radio crackle, a voice spoke. McCullen, status check, hull alignment. He adjusted his grip. Alignment steady, pressure at depth limit. But the sound's wrong, Commander. The resonance is off by a full tone off. We're reading nominal up. Here, McCullen paused, listening. No, sir, the sea's echoing back at us. Like it's alive. Just finished the calibration. Diver, we're running out of daylight. The voice faded. McCullen exhaled slowly, the bubbles rising past his mask. And then, he heard it, a low moan, not mechanical, not natural. Something between a tremor and a whisper. The steel beneath his gloves vibrated faintly, responding. Then, without warning, the world exploded. The pressure wave slammed him backward, a wall of force ripping through the water, the tether cable snapped, and everything went black. He woke hours later in a decompression chamber, ears bleeding, vision blurred. They told him the system failed. That everyone else was gone, that he was lucky to be alive. But he remembered the sound, that deep, impossible voice of the ocean answering back. Present, USS Vanguard, 2025. The sonar room was dead silent now, save for the steady ping ... ping ... Ping from the depths. Morales spoke softly. You're saying that thing, that sound. It's the prototype from your mission. McCullen's eyes were fixed on the glowing dot. The system was supposed to sync with the ocean floor, to detect vibrations through resonance memory. We made the sea a mirror, and now something's looking back through it. The Admiral clenched his fists. Enough riddles, McCullen. You're telling me there's a machine under us. The old diver's gaze didn't waver, not a machine anymore. The sonar display flickered suddenly. The blip split into two, then four, like ripples multiplying. Multiple contacts, the sonar officer shouted. Depth varying between 150 and 180. They're circling us. The Admiral's voice thundered. Battle stations. Crewmen sprinted to their posts, alarms screaming again. But McCullen stayed still, closing his eyes for a moment. He whispered under his breath, almost like prayer. Don't wake what's already listening. Morales grabbed his arm. Sir, if these are drones or weapons, we need to deploy countermeasures. McCullen shook his head. You deploy noise, you feed it. The system reacts to vibration, to sound pressure. That's what started this decades ago. He turned to the Admiral. You want to survive. Shut it all down, engines, sonar power, everything. The Admiral's jaw tightened. You're asking me to blind my ship in the middle of the Pacific. I'm asking you to make her silent. There was a long pause, the kind that stretches between faith and fear. Then, slowly, the Admiral gave the order, power down all non-essential systems. Kill sonar. The hum of the engines faded, the lights dimmed to amber. One by one, the ship's mechanical heartbeats ceased. And in that silence, the ocean spoke again. It was faint at first, a distant pulse, like the echo of thunder beneath miles of water. Then it grew clearer. A rhythmic pattern, steady and deliberate, Morse code. McCullen leaned closer to the console, whispering each letter as it came. TRP, his face went pale. It's a warning. From who? Morales asked. McCullen looked at the Admiral, voice low. From whoever's still down there. The sonar room filled with tension so thick it felt alive. Then, a sudden thud reverberated through the hull. The deck shuddered, lights flickered. Depth charge. The Admiral barked. The weapons officer shook his head. Negative. External contact mid-hull, starboard side. McCullen grabbed a handrail, his voice steady. It's trying to surface, it's coming. Up. Seconds later, the ship tilted slightly. A deep, grinding sound rose from below, as if something vast and metallic was scraping against it. Through the porthole, bubbles and darkness boiled upward, and then a shape emerged. It wasn't a submarine, it was larger, older. The hull was covered in coral and rust, but through the silt, faint letters gleamed. DW-01, McCullen whispered, Almost to himself, it survived. The Admiral stared in disbelief. You're telling me that's your prototype? That thing's been at the bottom for 40 years. Yes, McCollum said quietly, and it's not empty, not empty. McCollum's voice trembled for the first time. It's broadcasting because someone's still inside. The room fell into stunned silence. Even the hum of machines seemed afraid to intrude. He looked out the window again, toward the ghostly shape rising beside them. 40 years, he whispered. 40 years, and it never stopped calling. The sea was no longer quiet. The ocean around the USS Vanguard churned with a heavy, unnatural pulse, as though the water itself carried a memory too heavy to hold. The ghostly shape of DW-01 floated beside the warship, a half-sunken relic from another time, its hull draped in coral and steel wounds that whispered of 40 years of silence. McCollum stood at the observation deck, rain beating on the glass before him. His reflection looked older than he remembered. Behind him, Admiral Sloane's voice broke the stillness. How the hell did that thing survive? McCollum didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the twisted metal giant beneath the waves. Because it wasn't supposed to die, he said softly. We sealed it with something stronger than steel, guilt. Sloane frowned. You mean someone survived that disaster? McCollum turned slowly. Not someone, many, but they were never brought back. They were written off as lost, to protect a secret that shouldn't have existed. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. A secret? What kind of secret? McCollum stepped forward, resting his hands on the console. Project Deep Wake wasn't just about sonar. It was a weapon, an experimental acoustic deterrent designed to destabilize submarines through resonance. But the ocean fought back. The feedback loop killed everyone inside. Morales, standing nearby, looked horrified. And you survived that? McCollum nodded slowly. By chance. I surfaced before the detonation. They told me to forget. They said the ocean buried it, and that was mercy. Enough outside. Lightning split the clouds, illuminating the water. For a heartbeat, the letters DW-01 glowed bright beneath the waves, like a name carved on a tombstone. Then, through the speakers, a crackle of static filled the room. The sonar operator jerked back from his console. Sir, we're receiving a direct signal. McCollum froze. Patch it through. The speakers hissed again, and then, faintly, impossibly, came a voice. Grainy, distant, broken by static. Callan, if you hear this, it means you came back. Everyone in the control room went still. The Admiral's hand tightened around the edge of the console. We sealed the hatch. Pressure's stable. The sea's quiet again. Don't let them erase us, Mac. Don't let them bury the wake. McCollum's throat tightened. It was the voice of Commander Ellis, his team leader, the man who had given the final order 40 years ago. If they find this ship, tell them we didn't die down here. We became part of it. The ocean remembers. Everything. The message ended in static. Then silence. McCollum leaned against the glass, trembling. I told them we shouldn't have made the sea listen. I told them. The Admiral turned to him. Can we retrieve them, the bodies? McCollum's eyes were glassy. Bodies? He shook his head slowly. No, Admiral, not bodies. What's down there isn't human anymore. The pressure, the resonance, it rewrote everything. The ship's part of the seabed now, Morales whispered. Then what's broadcasting? The signal. McCollum looked at the sonar screen again. The single pulse had become multiple, forming a perfect pattern, one that echoed the heartbeat of the Vanguard itself. It's mirroring us, he said quietly. Responding to our systems, every sound we make, it repeats. The sea's been learning, the Admiral snapped. Learning what? How to be heard, McCollum said simply. That night, the rain grew harder. Floodlights shimmered across the ocean surface, glinting off rusted metal and swarming. Foamed divers suited up on deck, their helmets gleaming like ghosts under the red light. Admiral Sloane approached McCollum, who stood by the railing holding his old brass helmet, the same one from Project Deep Wake. You're not going down there, the Admiral said firmly. McCollum gave a faint smile. You don't understand, Admiral. I've always been down there. Sloane's voice rose. You're not authorized to, but the old diver was already stepping into the harness. It's not about orders anymore. It's about ending the echo before anyone could stop him. McCullen descended into the black water, the line unspooling into endless depth. The sea swallowed him whole. At first, there was nothing but darkness and his own breath, slow, rhythmic, mechanical. Then the sound began, low, resonant, alive. The hum of the ocean grew into a voice that filled his helmet, pressing against his mind. "Welcome back." He froze. The words weren't spoken. They were vibrated, a pulse of sound through water and bone. We remember, ahead, faint lights glowed through the darkness, the shattered windows of DW-01. The ship rested on the ocean floor like a monument of sorrow. As McCullen approached, he saw movement, not living, not dead, just shifting. The hull flexed, breathing softly. Inside, shattered shapes floated, tethered to consoles. Helmets cracked, suits torn, but they moved with the current, in sync, as if still alive in some impossible way. McCullen's light flickered across the control panel. A single indicator blinked weakly. Transmit active. He touched the console, and the sound flared again, a deep, harmonious resonance that vibrated through the water. His chest ached with it. "You shouldn't have come back," he smiled faintly. "I never left. The ocean keeps what it's owed." McCullen's hands tightened around the lever marked manual override. He took a deep breath. "Then it's time to pay the debt." He pulled the lever. A blinding surge of light filled the wreck. The water trembled. Up on the Vanguard, the sonar screens erupted into chaos. "Sir, massive energy spike below. It's triggering feedback." The Admiral shouted. "McCullen, respond." McCullen, only static answered. Then, through the static, a calm voice. "Tell them." The sea's quiet now, and the signal vanished. Hours later, the storm passed. The ocean was calm again, glassy and endless. The wreck of DW-01 no longer appeared on sonar. Only the faint hum of the current remained on the Vanguard. The crew stood in silence. Morales approached the Admiral, holding McCullen's brass helmet. It had surfaced alone, dented and cold. "What do we tell command, sir?" he asked quietly. The Admiral looked out over the horizon. "Tell them the system was unstable. That it never should have been built." He paused, then added softly, "And tell them a man listened deeper than any of us ever dared." Weeks later, when the Vanguard returned to port, a small brass plaque appeared near the engine room. No ceremony, no speech, just a name, and a line below it. He listened to what others ignored, and heard the truth beneath. Sometimes, late at night, when the ship rested quietly at anchor, engineers swore they could still hear faint tapping from the hull. A rhythm, a pulse, almost like Morse code. THNKS.